the country for a few days. And what brings you here?
Shopping for Mr. Moncrief. Lady Bracknell is coming to tea today.
Ah, and her daughter. Will Miss Fairfax be there also?
Well, yes, she will.
Mr. Worthing will be delighted to hear.
Of that I have no doubt. Greengrocer, are these all the cucumbers you have? Just a moment.
Excuse me, Mr. Perkins. But I've been telling him, Mr. Worthing's bill, and it comes to £54. Not that it's credit here ain't good, but if it ain't too much trouble, would you kindly bring it to his attention?
I'll mention it to him, Mr. Grimes.
Will these do? These will do nicely. Thank you.
I say, is Mr. Moncrief aware there's a shade behind this bill?
You can be sure that I shall apprise him of the fact in my earliest opportunity. Mr. Lane, is Mr. Moncrief aware he was over £30 in piano lessons? He never did learn to play accurately. He may not play accurately. Anyone can play accurately. But he plays with wonderful expression.
Mr. Perkins, Mr. Worthing owes me £65 worth of art. I admit, he is generous to a fault when it comes to cigars for old friends. He doesn't care for them himself. And Mr. Worthing owes me over £70 for dancing lessons.
Well, I say it's come to a pretty pass when gentlemen consider the thing not to pay their debts.
There's nothing you can do about
No
it.
way of murder, they do.
You're absolutely
I
right.
haven't seen a single penny for 2 years. My dear fellows, we understand your position. Believe me. But you owe it to Mr. Moncrief and Mr. Worthing to look at both sides of the coin.
We ain't seen neither side of the coin for quite some time.
You're likely to neither.
That's what I've been saying.
We have our debts, you know.
I'll tell them.
Now, just a moment, consider gentlemen. The rich will suddenly pay their bills and be caused for real distress. And you will suddenly find yourselves in a stupefying, terrifying, bloody awful mess.
What are you talking about?
What do you mean a mess?
It's all quite simple. Your accounts will be in a jumble, your ledgers all in a hash. For the next aristocracy. For that 4 years, our economy will crumble and the Bank of England crash. If we are last but not always in our ears, the son inherits the father's debt to Japanese electrician. And though the system puts you in a ticklish position, it nevertheless gives one a sense of British tradition. Gives one a little sense of British tradition. So you see, gentlemen, you should be singing the praises of the aristocracy. Come, raise your up to the upper classes who feel here. They stand for us. We won't so take it. War rules to which they sell and here. They are so can raise a cup of cheer.
I hate to seem demanding. It leaves me close to tears. But I've waited for their checks to come. For 13 years, they leave their bills outstanding.
We're full of laughs. But we are
Left
left
in quite bereft by the autographs.
They call themselves a wealthy class, so what a definition. That they have any means and all is purely supposition. And may the idol on the blood is their supreme ambition. And we say, hey, British tradition.
Gentlemen, why we couldn't manage without the aristocracy. Think of them from a purely ornamental standpoint. Consider the color they lend the English countryside. Hunting on the Thames in their summer finery, rowing at Henley in their boaters and blazers and old school ties. Come, gentlemen. Come, raise your cup
To the upper classes who win with their hurrah! They stand for all they get. We also take a major cup. For those who
My dear Miss Fairfax, I should like to be allowed the pleasure of calling upon you and your mother this... The pleasure of calling upon you this afternoon at 5 o'clock.
Excuse me, sir. I have your shoes. If you care to examine.
Excellent, Perkins.
If you'll pardon my mentioning it, sir, your cobbler was a bit agitated about your bill.
Perkins, it is only by not paying one's bills that one can hope to live in the minds of the commercial classes. All real gentlemen are in debt. If I hadn't my debts, I shouldn't have anything to think about.
Incidentally, sir, Miss Fairfax and Lady Bracknell will be having tea today at Mr. Moncrief's flat. I thought you might like to know.
Excellent, Perkins. If I didn't rely so heavily upon your services, I should recommend you to Scotland Yard.
Well, thank you, sir, but I prefer here. I also stopped by Miss Fairfax's home, and I mentioned to her maid that you might also be at Mr. Moncrief's this afternoon. I hope that was all right.
Quite all right, Perkins. In fact, I think I shall propose to Miss Fairfax today. Mr. Moncrief's flat would be an eminently suitable setting.
Oh, yes, sir. Might I be permitted to offer my felicitations?
Oh, yes, Perkins, thank you. That will be all. Oh, Perkins!
Yes, sir.
I haven't much experience in proposing. None, in fact. Does one generally go on one's knees?
Beg your pardon, sir?
When proposing, does one generally kneel?
I'm afraid I don't know, sir. I've had very little experience in proposing myself. I've only been there once. And that was a consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and the young lady.
Very good, Perkins, that will do.
Very good, sir.
My dear Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, ever since I... Damn! How do you find the words for a proposal? How do you know precisely what to say? There must be certain schools establishing certain rules for what to say on this important day. I mean, really, you say I cannot live without you. But both of you know that if you must, you can. And isn't it rather strange to propose to such an angel when you are just a mortal sort of man? I've not told her that I love her. I've not brought myself down. Still, and all I must have shown her just how much I really care. And how do you find? How do you find the words for a proposal? How do you tell her all you're dreaming of? The wonderful things you'll share, the marvelous things you dare, the wonders and the marvels found in love. How do you find the proper touch? How do you tell her just how much, oh how much you are in love? How? First you say, how do you do? Then you say, and how are you? You know she's fine, she's looking divine, but formalities must be gone through. Next you're expected to say, why, marvelous day. It's part of the game for you to do just the same if the sky were a hideous gray. Then you are left on your own, and there you will stand all alone. But how can you speak with your knees growing weak when you're drunk on the scent of cologne? How do you find the words for a proposal? Will you get inspiration from above? What do you say and do? And how do you muddle through? And how do you find the simple fact that you're terribly shy and insecure, terribly nervous and unsure, but so much in love? Perkins.
This definitely will not do.
Was it love at first sight with you and Mr. Worthing, miss?
No, it was not love at first sight, but love at the end of the season, which is so much more satisfactory.
I see.
Alice,
Yes, miss?
when it comes to fashion, remember, be as pretty as possible. It is the best fashion there is, and the only fashion that England succeeds in selling.
Yes, miss.
Alice, what do you suppose is the first thing a man notices about a woman?
The hat?
Precisely. The hat. The hat. The proper hat is absolutely vital. To win the heart of someone with the proper wealth or title. A hat can overwhelm a man and frighten him away. A fetching hat can fetch a man and make him want to stay. The hat can make the shyest gentleman feel daring. For he sees the hat and it matters not what else the lady's wearing. Good divers famous right through town, they're absolutely flat. But people would have noticed her if she had worn a hat. There isn't a single hat here in which I should care to become engaged.
It's a marvel to me, Miss Gwendolyn, how you can be so sure Mr. Worthing will propose this very afternoon. Are you quite certain?
Oh, yes. For one thing, bachelors are not fashionable anymore. And for another, Mr. Worthing very nearly proposed to me last time we met. Unfortunately, Mamma has a way of entering the room which I often have to speak to her about. Oh, this definitely will not do. Makes me look like an absolute gorgon.
What about this one, miss?
Ooh, this one is quite sweet. But I wonder, is this a hat to instigate the offer of a marriage? Is this the hat that I can wear with proper grace and courage? Perhaps you'll think it's frivolous, I think I am too, but on the other hand, it does set off my eyes blue. Is this the hat to make a man feel terribly romantic? Or best of all, is it just the hat to drive a fellow frantic? The hat is quite as vital as the gentleman's cravat. To make quite sure we tie that knot, I must have just the Alice. Read that here.
Why, it's made for you, Miss Gwendolyn.
Yes, it is, isn't it? The hat,
The proper hat is absolutely vital. The hat, we found the proper hat.
to win the heart of someone with the proper wealth or title.
The hat, the most delightful hat.
A hat can overwhelm a man and frighten him away. A fetching hat can fetch a man and make him want to stay.
And stay, and stay, and stay, and stay.
The hat, we can make the shyest gentleman feel daring to kiss.
The lady young and fair.
For he sees the hat and it matters not what else the lady's wearing. Good divers, divers, ravens try, then absolutely flatly fluff. But people would have noticed her if she had worn but a charming and alarming and the most alarming hat.
sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell?
Oh, yes, sir.
Very tasty. Is it not appallingly that in order to remain in the best society, one must feed people, amuse people, or shock people?
Yes, sir. Quite appalling.
To be in society is merely a bore, but to be out of it is simply a tragedy. At least, that is what Aunt Augusta's been telling me for nearly 25 years.
Quite so, sir. Oh, excuse me, sir. Mr. Ernest Worthing, sir.
Oh, how are you, my dear Ernest? What brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure, Algy, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see.
I believe it is customary in good society to take some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since that Thursday?
Oh, in the country.
Oh, what on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses the neighbors.
Yeah. Got nice neighbors in your part of Shropshire?
Perfectly horrid, never speak to one of them.
How immensely you must amuse them. And by the way, Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Shropshire. Oh, yes, of course. Hello, why these cups? Why these cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who is coming to tea?
Only Aunt Augusta and Gwendolen.
Oh, how perfectly delightful.
Yes, but I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolen is perfectly disgraceful. It is almost as bad as the way that Gwendolen flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolen. I've come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you had come up to town for pleasure. That sounds to me like business.
Oh, Algy, how utterly unromantic you are.
I really don't see anything romantic in proposing. It's very romantic to be in love, but there is nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Why may be accepted? One usually is, I believe. Then the whole excitement is all over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If I ever get married, I'll certainly try to forget the fact. Oh, please don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They're made specially for Aunt Augusta.
You've been eating them all the time.
That is quite a different matter. She is my aunt. Have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolen. Gwendolen is devoted to bread and butter.
And very good bread and butter it is, too.
Well, you need not eat as though you were going to eat it all. You behave as though you were married to her already. You are not married to her already, and I don't think you ever will be.
Why on earth do you say that?
Well, in the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with.
Oh, that is nonsense.
And in the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear fellow, Gwendolen is my first cousin, and before I allow you to marry her, you will have to clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? I don't know what on earth you could possibly mean. I don't know anyone with the name of Cecily.
Then, how do you account for this cigarette case you left last time you dined here? From little Cecily with her fondest love to her dear...
Algy, it is a very ungentlemanly thing to read a private cigarette case.
Oh, it is absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should read and what one shouldn't. Half of modern culture is based on what one shouldn't read.
Will you give me back my cigarette case?
But this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a present from someone of the name of Cecily, and you said that you didn't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you must know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes, charming old lady she is too, but at Tunbridge Wells. Now you give me back my cigarette case.
But why does your aunt call herself Little Cecily?
My dear fellow, some aunts are tall, some aunts are not so tall. That is surely a matter that an aunt may be allowed to decide for herself. Now will you give me back my cigarette case?
Yes, but why does your aunt call you her uncle? From little Cecily with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. Now I have no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt. But why an aunt, no matter what her size, should call her own nephew her uncle, I can't quite make out. And besides, your name isn't Jack, it is Ernest.
It isn't Ernest, it's Jack.
You have always told me your name was Ernest. I've introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You look as though your name was Ernest. You are the most earnest-looking person I have ever seen in my life. It is perfectly ridiculous you're saying your name isn't Ernest. It's on your cards. Here's one of them. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany. I'll keep this as proof your name is Ernest, if you ever attempt to deny it to me, or to Gwendolyn, or to anybody else.
Well, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country, and the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Aha! I've always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret Bunburyist. I'm quite sure of it now.
Bunburyist? What earth is a Bunburyist?
I'll tell you as soon as you inform me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now produce your explanation, and pray make it improbable.
My dear fellow, there's nothing improbable about my explanation at all. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was born, made me his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily. Cecily, who addresses me as uncle, for motives of respect which I could not possibly appreciate, resides at my place in the country with the guidance of her admirable governess, Miss Prism.
Oh, where is that place in the country, by the way?
That is nothing to you, my dear boy. You are not going to be invited. May I candidly tell you this is not in Shropshire?
I suspected that, my dear fellow. I have Bunburyed all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now go on. Why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
Well, when one is guardian, one has to adopt a very high moral tone. As a high moral tone can hardly be said to produce much for either one's health or one's happiness. I've always pretended to have a younger brother of the name of Ernest, who lives in the Albany in the most dreadful straits. I have to come up to town to rescue him. Now that, my dear fellow, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. What you really are is a Bunburyist. In fact, you're one of the most advanced Bunburyists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented a very useful younger brother called Ernest, so that you may go down into, come up to town as often as you like. I, on the other hand, have invented an invaluable permanent invalid called Bunbury, so that I may go down into the country whenever I choose. Bunbury, with his extraordinary bad health, is absolutely indispensable. Bunburying is known to loosen a moral tone. A marvelous friend to own is Mr. Bunbury. When cities have lost their charm, and invalid friends alarm, calls me to a Shropshire farm to Mr. Bunbury, where the girls are sweet and country bred, and slightly overfed, but easily misled. Still it's wise to have an nom de plume, so when you're done you can't be chased and can't be traced. For what you may have done to whom, Bunburying's a lark, especially after dark. Why even the shyest clerk must have his Bunbury. A manage one should take, if one is to play the rake, and never be caught in making one mistake. So one can have an escapade with dairy maids and marmalade. A fellow must have a bank like Mr. Bunbury.
Why, yes, I'm beginning to understand. I'm afraid, however, that I find your Mr. Bunbury rather distasteful, and your behavior is completely immoral.
Oh, come now, Jack. It is precisely this modern mania for morality which causes everyone to pose as a paragon of purity, incorruptibility, and all the other 7 deadly virtues. These scandals used to lend charm to a man. Now they crush him. For Bunbury is a social necessity. In an age when sex is not discussed,
Except upon the stage.
a Bunbury's a must. It's the rage.
Besides, it's rather fun.
The books are read and nothing's said and nothing's read, but nearly everything is done. Fellows can have a lark, a daddying in the park. A girl's an easy mark with Mr. Bunbury. Whenever I need him most, my invalid friend and host is glad to pretend he's leaving
wonderfully, but I am going to get rid of Ernest. If Gwendolyn accepts me, I shall kill my brother. In fact, I think I shall kill him in any case. Cecily's getting to be a little too much interested in him. It might be a good idea to do the same to Mr. Bunbury.
Nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury. And if you ever do get married, which still seems to me extremely problematic, you will be very glad to know Bunbury.
Oh, that is nonsense. If I marry a charming girl like Gwendolyn, I shall not want to know Bunbury.
Well, then your wife will. You don't seem to realize that in married life, 3 is company and 2 is none.
For heaven's sake, don't try to be cynical. It's perfectly easy to be cynical.
It isn't easy to be anything nowadays. There's such a lot of beastly competition about. Ah, that must be Aunt Augusta and Gwendolyn. Only relatives or creditors ever ring in that Wagnerian manner.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, Algernon. I hope you are behaving very well.
I'm feeling quite well, Aunt Augusta.
That is not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Oh, dear me, you are smart.
I am always smart, am I not, Mr. Worthing?
You are quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I am not that. It would leave no room for development. And I can develop in many directions.
I'm sorry if we are a little late, Algernon. I was obliged to call on dear Lady Harbury. I hadn't been there since her poor husband's death. I've never seen a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. And now I'll have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Oh, certainly, Aunt Augusta. Oh, good heavens. Lane, why are there no cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially.
There were no cucumbers in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers.
No, sir. Not even for ready money.
Thank you, Lane. That will do.
Thank you, sir.
I am greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, about there being no cucumbers in the market today. Not even for ready money.
No matter, Algernon. I had some crumpets with Lady Harbury, who seems to be living entirely for play now.
Oh, I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed its color, from what cause I, of course, cannot say. Thank you. I've quite a treat for you tonight, Algernon.
Oh.
I'm going to send you down to dinner with Mary Farquhar.
Oh. I am afraid, Aunt Augusta, that I shall not have the pleasure of dining with you this evening, but I have just had a telegram informing me that my poor friend Bunbury is very ill again. They seem to think I should be with him.
Well, I must say, I think it is high time that Mr. Bunbury made up his mind whether he was going to live or die. This shilly-shallying with the question is absurd. I should be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury from me to be kind enough not to have a relapse on Saturday, for I rely on you to arrange my music for me.
Oh, I'll talk to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, if he is still conscious, and I think I can promise you that he'll be all right by Saturday. Now, if you'll kindly follow me into the music room, I'll show you the program I've drawn out for you.
Thank you, Algernon. It is quite thoughtful of you. I'm sure the program will be delightful after a few expurgations. French songs I simply cannot allow. People always seem to think they are improper, and either look shocked, which is vulgar, or laugh, which is worse. But German sounds a thoroughly respectable language, and indeed I believe is so. Gwendolen, you will accompany me.
Certainly, Mamma.
Charming day it's been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I feel quite certain that they mean something else.
But I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I'm never wrong.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I've admired you more than any other girl I've ever met, since I met you.
I am aware of the fact. And for me, you have always held an irresistible fascination. The moment Algernon first mentioned to me that he had a friend called Ernest, I knew I was destined to love you.
Do you really love me, Gwendolyn?
Passionately.
Darling, you don't know how happy you've made me. When can we be married?
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, yes. Surely you know that I love you, and you led me to believe that you were not absolutely indifferent to me.
Well, I adore you, but you have not proposed to me yet. Nothing at all has been said about marriage. The subject has not even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity. And to spare you an impossible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it's only fair to tell you quite frankly that I am fully determined to accept you.
Oh, Gwendolyn!
Yes, Mr. Worthing. What have you got to say to me?
But you know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it. Do you wish to tell me that I'm charming?
No.
Delightful?
No.
Well, Mr. Worthing.
Well, I wouldn't say you're charming, delightful, or disarming. I'd find a way to simply say perfection. I wouldn't say beguiling describes the way you're smiling. I'd find the phrase that best conveys perfection. The Mona Lisa may thrill me. The Venus may chill me, but they grow pale when you come into view. How I never hope to capture a synonym for rapture, for words are quite enough when one is reaching for the moon. I'd simply say I worship perfection. Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long have you been about it? Wonderfully blue eyes you have, Ernest. They are quite blue. And do hope you will always look at me just like that. Especially when there are other people present. It's always been my ideal to love someone with earnest. There's something in that name that inspires absolutely.
What, you don't mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest?
But your name is Ernest.
But I don't think it suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibrations.
But really, darling, I really think there are much nicer names. I think Jack, for instance, is a charming name.
Jack? Oh, no. There's very little music in the name of Jack. It does not thrill, it produces no vibration. I have known several Jacks, and they were all, without exception, more than usually plain. The only really safe name is Ernest.
Gwendolyn, I must get christened at once.
What?
I said, darling, we must get married at once.
Mr. Worthing, rise, sir, from this semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous. Mamma, I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing is not quite finished yet. Finished what, may I ask? I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mamma. Pardon me? You are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged, I or your father, should his health permit, will inform you of the fact. for herself. And now, Mr. Worthing, I have a few questions to put to you. Gwendolen, you'll wait for me in the carriage.
Mamma?
In the carriage, Gwendolen.
Yes, Mamma.
I feel bound to point out to you that you are not down on my list of eligible young men. Though I do have the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton. We work together, in fact. However, I am ready to put your name down should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Oh, well, yes, I must admit that I do smoke.
I am pleased to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
A very good age to be married at. I've always been of the opinion that a man who wishes to be married should know everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I am pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate exotic fruit. Touch it, and the bloom is gone. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England, at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. What is your income?
Between £7,000 and £8,000 a year.
That is satisfactory. In land or investments?
Investments chiefly, although I do have a country house with some land attached to it. About 1,500 acres, I believe.
A country house? How many bedrooms? Oh, well, that point can be cleared up afterwards. You have a townhouse, I hope. A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolen could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
Well, I have a house in Belgrave Square. It's let by the year, but I could get it back whenever I liked.
What number in Belgrave Square?
149.
Oh, the unfashionable side. I thought there was something, however, that could easily be altered.
What, the fashion or the style?
Both. If necessary, I presume. Now to minor matters. Are your parents living?
Well, I'm sorry to say that I've lost both my parents.
Both? To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, that could be regarded as a misfortune. But to lose both, that's careless. Was your father?
Well, Lady Bracknell, I said that I'd lost my parents. It might be more accurate to say that my parents lost me. Well, I was found.
Found?
Yes, old Mr. Thomas Cardew, a man of very charitable disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing, because he happened to have a ticket for Worthing this pocket time. It's a place in Sussex, a seaside resort.
Where did a charitable gentleman with the first-class ticket to the seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, a rather large black handbag with handles to it. An ordinary handbag, in fact.
In what locality did this Mr. Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
In the cloakroom at Victoria Station. It was given to him in the State for his own.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station?
Yes, the Brighton line.
The line is immaterial. Mr. Worthing, I confess, I feel somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born, or at any rate, bred in a handbag. Whether it had handles or not, shows a contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life, which remind one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. Your rather doubtful origin, a terminus, is shocking, appalling, it's horrid, and a cloakroom I am told is rather various, concealing adventures quite torrid. Now wickedness can be ignored,
surely bend your rules a little.
She can marry, I forbid her. Handbagger's not a proper mother, not a proper mother, not a proper mother.
But this passion within me I simply cannot smother.
Better find another mother or a proper father, or it's any rate a pair rather soon. Good day, Mr. Worthing.
Don't hum that ghastly tune.
Didn't it go off all right, old boy? You don't mean to tell me that Gwendolyn refused you.
Oh, Gwendolyn is right as a trivet. Her mother, however, is an absolute gorgon. Algy, you don't suppose that Gwendolyn could possibly become like her mother in about 150 years, do you?
All women become like their mothers. That is their tragedy. No man does. That is his. By the way, did you tell Gwendolyn the truth about your being Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
Oh, before the end of the week I shall have gotten rid of Ernest.
How do you propose to do that?
My brother will be carried off from Paris by a severe chill.
I thought you said Miss Cardule was a little too interested in your younger brother. And won't she feel his loss?
Oh, Cecily is not a silly romantic girl, I'm glad to say. She's a capital appetite, goes for long walks and pays absolutely no attention to her studies.
I would rather like to see Cecily.
And I shall take great care that you never do. She's excessively pretty and only just 18.
Have you told Gwendolyn that you have an excessively pretty ward who is only just 18?
Oh, Cecily and Gwendolyn are bound to be great friends. Before the week is out, they shall be calling each other sister.
Women only do that after they've called each other a lot of other things first. Miss Fairfax. Gwendolyn, upon my word.
Algy, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing. Ernest, we may never be married. From the expression of Mamma's face, I fear we never shall. But although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and although I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing she can ever do can alter my eternal devotion to you.
My own Gwendolyn.
Your town address I have. What is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Wilton, Hertfordshire.
I will communicate with you daily. Algy, you may turn round now.
Oh, thanks, I've turned around already.
May I see into your carriage?
Certainly.
Lane! What's that? Bunbury things, sir. We are going Bunbury, are we not? As a matter of fact, we are. Tell the doorman that should he have to contact us, we can be reached care of Worthing, the Manor House, Wilton, Hertfordshire. Very good, sir. So it's off with customary spats, and on with summer hats, and polka dot cravats. May your whites decrease in the west, and crown you bound to chomp down on the top for good and glorious goodness. A Bunbury I will go, I'm Bunbury's to sow, whatever I reap my love to Mr. Bunbury. I'll flatter my country miss, I'll check her that and this, and lead her to a magnificent place. I'll take her for a quiet stroll to some secluded country knoll, and I will take the lady's maid on some secluded country lane. And we will owe every kiss to Mr. Bunbury.
Your German grammar is on the table. Pray open it on page 15.
But I don't like German. It isn't at all a becoming language, and I know perfectly well that I'm not quite plain after my German lesson.
And child, you know how anxious your guardian is that you improve yourself in every way. He laid particular stress on your German as he was leaving for town yesterday. Indeed, he always lays stress on your German as he's leaving for town.
Dear Uncle Jack is so dreadfully serious.
Cecily, Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. Idle merriment and triviality would be out of place in his conversation. You must remember his constant anxiety about that unfortunate young man, his brother.
I wish Uncle Jack would allow that unfortunate young man to come down here sometime. We might have a good influence over him in his prison. I know you certainly do. You know German and geology and things of that kind influence a man very much.
I do not think that even I could have any effect on a character that, according to his own brother's admission, is irretrievably weak and vacillating. Indeed, I do not think I would desire to reclaim him. I am not at all in favor of this modern maniac for turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man, so let him reap. You should put away your diary, Cecily. I really don't see why you should keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to recall the wonderful secrets of my life. It is my answer to the 3-volume novel. Indeed, it is vastly more exciting than most 3-volume novels.
Do not speak slightingly of the 3-volume novel, Cecily. I wrote one myself in earlier days.
Did you bear in this prison? How wonderfully clever you are. I hope it did not end happily. I don't like novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
The good ended happily, and the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means.
I suppose so, but it seems very unfair. And was your novel ever published?
Alas, no, the manuscript unfortunately was abandoned. I use the word in the sense of lost or mislaid. To your work child, these speculations are profitless.
Reverend Dr. Chalmers?
And how are we this afternoon?
Dr. Chasuble, this is indeed a pleasure.
Miss Bridget, you are, I trust, well?
Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do her so much good if you would have a short stroll with her in the park, Dr. Chasuble.
Oh, Cecily, I have not mentioned anything about a headache.
No, dear Miss Prism, I know that. But I felt instinctively that you had a headache. Indeed, I was thinking about that and not my German lesson when the rector came in.
Cecily, I trust you are not inattentive. Your guardian has not returned from town yet, I suppose?
Oh, we do not look for him until Monday afternoon.
Ah, yes, he usually likes to spend his Sundays in London. He's not one of those whose sole aim is enjoyment, as, by all accounts, that unfortunate young man, his brother, seems to be. But I must not disturb Algeria as a pupil any longer.
Algeria? But my name is Laetitia, Doctor.
A classical allusion drawn from the pagan authors. I can see you both no doubt even so.
I think, dear Doctor, I will have a stroll with you. I find I have a headache after all, and a walk might do it good.
With pleasure, Miss Pridham, with pleasure. We might go as far as the schools and back.
That would be delightful. Cecily, you will read your political economy in my absence. The chapter on the fall of the rupee may or may not be somewhat too sensational.
Horrid political economy, horrid geography, horrid German. Mr. Ernest Worthing has just arrived from the station. He's brought his luggage with him. Mr. Ernest Worthing, before the Albany, Uncle Jack's wicked younger brother. Pray, ask Mr. Worthing to come out here. And Effie, I suppose you had better talk to the housekeeper about a room for him. Yes. I have never met any really wicked person before. I'm rather frightened. I'm so afraid he'll look just like everyone else. I hope he looks so devilish that I almost faint away. I hope pounds or so. And yet he should live simply, yes, as only rich men can. But most of all, I hope he is a truly wicked man. I never know a wicked man, and yet he's in my every dream. My I hope he's given the most awful scrapes and insists on telling them at dinner parties. His prison says a man who can dominate a London dinner table can dominate the world. I hope he's most experienced and that his past has been so absolutely horrid it would turn a Don Juan green. For each blue-blooded English girl, since England first began, has lived her whole life just to meet a truly wicked man. I've never known a wicked man, and yet he's in my every dream.
Lane, you may attend to the luggage.
Very good, sir.
I'll show you to the room.
You are my little cousin Cecily.
I am not little. In fact, I am more than usually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily, and you are my wicked cousin Ernest.
Oh, I am really not wicked at all, cousin Cecily.
If you are not, you have been deceiving us all in a very inexcusable manner.
Oh, of course I have been rather reckless.
I am glad to hear it.
In fact, I've been very bad in my own small way.
I don't think you should be so proud of it, though I am sure it must have been very pleasant.
I thought you might reform me, cousin Cecily.
I'm afraid I've not the time this afternoon.
Oh, well, would you mind my reforming myself this afternoon?
That is quixotic of you, but I think you should try.
I will. I feel better already.
You are looking a little worse.
Oh, that is because I'm hungry.
Oh, how thoughtless of me. I should have remembered when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come into the house?
Oh, thank you, but might I have a buttonhole first? I never have any appetite unless I have a buttonhole first.
A Maréchal
I'd sooner have a pink rose.
Why?
Because you are like a pink rose, cousin Cecily.
I don't think it can be right for you to talk to me like that. Miss Prism never said such things to me.
And his prison is a short-sighted old lady. You are the prettiest girl I ever saw.
Miss Prism says all good looks are a snare.
They are a snare that every sensible man would like to be caught in.
Oh, I don't think I would care to catch a sensible man. I shouldn't know what to talk to him about.
Doctor, everyone needs companionship.
Oh, here comes Miss Prism, and I haven't even looked at my political economy. Come, Ernest, quickly!
But I am a celibate, madam. The precept as well as the practice of the primitive church was distinctly against matrimony.
But that is obviously the reason why the primitive church has not lasted up to the present day. Oh dear, I see Cicely has left her studies. I'm afraid afraid she is not an enthusiastic pupil.
Well, that is strange. Were I fortunate enough to be your pupil, I should hang upon your very lips. I spoke metaphorically. My metaphor was drawn from the deeds.
Oh, I quite understand. Dear doctor, I fear you are too much alone. You really should get married. You do not seem to realize that by persistently remaining single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation. Men should be careful. This very celibacy leads weaker vessels astray. Metaphorically speaking, that is.
But is a man not equally attractive when married?
Oh, no married man is ever attractive, except to his wife.
And often, I am told, not even to her.
That depends upon the experience of the woman. Maturity can be depended upon. It is the flower in full bloom. Botanically speaking, that is, you understand my metaphor.
Oh, quite.
Maturity can be attractive. Its brightness is readily seen. Though young women may be more active, you will find they are terribly green, incurably green, unintolerably green.
I must say, I've never heard it put quite that way.
Metaphorically speaking, young girls are green.
Merely me. Horticulturally speaking, they're green.
Yes, doctor.
Your metaphor was drawn from the fruit, no doubt.
Precisely. I was thinking of the apple. I marvel, dear doctor, at your power to resist all forms of temptation.
Ah, but as a rector, I must. I value my high reputation among women spotlessly clean. To the ladies of my congregation, I'm a pillar on which they may lean. This something seen on their friends.
Forgive me, doctor, I misunderstood your meaning for a moment.
I merely mean, metaphorically speaking, on me they lean.
You merely mean, architecturally speaking, really.
Precisely, my metaphor from the Tower of Pisa.
Ah, what's the time even the sturdiest monument will topple? Your attitude towards staying single is unnatural and too pristine. If the piano rolls but don't mingle, then a flash of the rose goes unseen, and a blush should be seen.
Yes, I see what you mean.
At last I think myself clear.
Merely mean that for many a flower will blush unseen. Merely mean, metaphorically speaking,
Biologically speaking,
that the bee and the flower come in.
Oh, good heavens!
Mr. Worthing, we did not expect you back until Monday afternoon.
I have returned sooner than I expected.
Mr. Worthing, I trust this garb of woe is not the token of some terrible calamity.
My brother.
More shameful deaths and extravagance.
Still leading his life of pleasure.
Dead.
Your brother, man, is dead.
Yes, quite dead. A severe chill.
Oh, what a lesson for him. I trust you will profit by it.
Charity, Dennis, cousin, charity. None of us is perfect. I myself am peculiarly susceptible to drought. Will the internment take place here?
No, I'm afraid he expressed a desire to be buried in Paris.
In Paris? I fear that hardly points to a serious state of mind at the last. You will no doubt wish me to make some slight allusion to this tragic domestic affliction in next Sunday's service.
Ah, yes, sir. Oh, speaking of services, you know how to christen all right, don't you? I mean, you're continually christening, aren't you?
It is, I regret to say, one of the rector's most constant duties. I have often spoken to the poorer classes on the subject, but they don't seem to know what thrift is.
Is there any particular instance in whom you're interested? Your brother was, I believe, unmarried.
People who live entirely for pleasure usually are.
No, the fact is, I was thinking of being christened myself.
But surely you've been christened already.
Well, I don't remember anything about it. You don't think I'm too old, do you?
A bit tall, perhaps. Would 5 o'clock suit you?
Perfect.
Oh, Uncle Jack, I am so pleased to see you back. But what horrid clothes you have on.
Cecily!
My child, my child.
Oh, do look happy, Uncle Jack. I have a surprise for you. He's here.
Who?
Your brother Ernest.
But nonsense, I haven't got a brother.
Oh, don't talk like that. However badly he may have behaved to you in the past, he's still your brother. I'll tell him to come out.
It's a very joyful tidings.
After we had all been so resigned to his loss, his sudden return seems peculiarly distressing.
My brother Ernest, in the dining room. I don't know what it all means. I think it's perfectly absurd. Oh, good heavens!
A miraculous recovery, indeed.
Brother John, I've come to tell you that I am very sorry for all the troubles I've given you, and that I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, you're not going to refuse your own brother's hand.
Nothing will induce me to take this hand. He knows perfectly well why.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There is some good in everyone. Ernest has just been telling me about his poor invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury. So often, surely there must be much good in one who is kind to an invalid, and leaves the pleasures of London to sit by a bed of pain.
Bunbury? I won't have him talk to you about Bunbury or anything else. It's enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
I must say I expected a somewhat more enthusiastic welcome, especially since this is the first time I have come here.
Uncle Jack, if you don't shake hands with Ernest, I shall never forgive you.
Never?
Never, never, never.
Well, this is the last time I shall ever do it. How do you do?
How do you do? It is pleasant, is it not, to see so perfect communion? Well, we might leave the two brothers together.
Cecily, you will come with us.
Certainly, Miss Blizzard. My little task of reconciliation is over.
Algy, you young scoundrel, you must leave this place at once. I don't allow any Bunbury here.
Excuse me, sir. I have put your things in the room next to Mr. Worthing's, sir.
What things?
The luggage, sir. 3 portmanteaus, a dressing case, 2 hat boxes, and a large luncheon basket.
I'm afraid I can't stay for more than a week this time.
Lane, you had better bring Mr. Moncrief's things back downstairs. He's suddenly been called back to town.
Just wait on the terrace, Lane.
Very good, sir.
What a fearful liar you are, Jack. I've not been called back to town at all.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you back.
My duty as a gentleman has never interfered with my pleasures in the smallest degree. And what's more, Cecily is a darling.
You are not to talk of Miss Cardew like that. I do not like it.
Well, I don't like your clothes. It is perfectly ridiculous for you to be in deep mourning for a man who's spending a whole week with you as a guest.
You are not spending a whole week with me as a guest or as anything else. You are leaving on the 4:05 train.
If you insist on my leaving, I shall wire Gwendolyn instantly to come down here. Then we shall see how she feels about your being Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
If you wire Gwendolyn, I shall expose you and your Mr. Bunbury to my ward.
Well, I certainly won't leave so long as you're on mourning. It would be most unfriendly.
Where will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, if you do not take too long. I never saw anyone take so long to dress. There was such little result.
It's better than always being overdressed as you are.
If I am occasionally a little overdressed, I make up for it by being always immensely overeducated.
Your vanity is ridiculous, your conduct an outrage, and your presence in my garden utterly absurd. You are leaving on the 4:05 train. The 4:05!
A man will try to play the cat, for girls adore a man who's bad. To love the rake is quite the norm. They love to make the rake reform. What's wrong today? A wicked man. What's wrong to be? A lady's dream. A lady's dream. A lady's plan is just to know a wicked man.
Lane,
Yes, sir?
you may go unpack my things.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, what a dream, oh, what a man, oh, what a scheme, what fun to play a wicked man.
Oh, Horace,
Yes, Effie?
I hope you'll be coming down here more often. My Miss Sisney seems to have taken quite a fancy to your Mr.
Mr. Ernest? Oh, yes. And he likewise.
I'll wager they're not around to holding hands.
Well, they've got all those formalities to go through. You know the upper classes. Rules, regulations,
Manners, morals.
money, titles, names. You can't talk love with all those things in the way. Oh, you can't talk love in a high, stiff collar with a cup of tea upon your knee.
But in a soft, warm jersey with a pint of bitter, talk comes easy.
Oh, you can't talk love in a skin-tight corset when your stage are pinching you to death.
But if you leave your figure just as nature left it, the one will hurt his breath.
The aristocrat treats a Shelley and Keats to cultivate the bargain bar.
But down amongst all the cats and bees, I cultivate the garden up.
Oh, you can't talk love in the master statue with a row of portraits on the wall. But in the kitchen pantry where there's no one looking, you can say it all. And when you say it all, then all is well. You're sweetly saying something you would never tell, and generosity rings a bell when you are talking now.
Cecily!
Ernest, Uncle Jack has told me you've been called back to town.
Oh, I'm not leaving just yet. But in the event I do have to go, I hope that I shall not offend you, Cecily, if I state, quite frankly, here and now, that you seem to be in every way the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. If you allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Oh, do you keep a diary? I'd give anything to look at it. May I?
Oh, no. You see, it is a record of a very young girl's thoughts and impressions, and consequently meant for publication. When it appears in volume form, I hope you will order a copy. But pray, Ernest, don't stop. I delight in taking down from dictation. I have reached absolute perfection. You can go on now. I am quite ready for more.
Must you write it down?
Of course.
Well, Cecily,
Oh, don't cough, Ernest. I don't know how to spell a cough. Whatever is the matter with you?
Truthfully, I don't know. All my life I've been so glib, full of dazzling repartee, full of sparkling synonyms. That is, until today. For when I dare to think of you, all my metaphors get mixed. When I dare to look at you, I stand here silently transfixed. hopelessly in love with you.
Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
Cecily, you will marry me, won't you?
Of course, silly. Why, we have been engaged for the last 3 months.
Oh, but how did we become engaged?
Well, ever since Uncle Jack confessed he had a wicked younger brother, you topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And of course, a man who is talked about is always very attractive. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
Oh, darling.
And here is the ring I bought and promised you I would always wear.
Did I give you this? It's very pretty.
Yes, you've wonderfully good taste, Ernest. It's always been the excuse I've given for your leading such a bad life. And here is the box in which I keep all your dear letters.
But my own sweet Cecily, I have never written you any letters.
You need hardly remind me of that. I remember only too well that I was forced to write your letters for you.
I'd give anything to look at them, may I?
Oh no, I couldn't possibly. They would make you far too conceited. The three you wrote me after I broke off the engagement are so beautiful and so badly spelled that even now I can hardly read them without crying a little.
But why was our engagement broken off?
It would hardly have been a really serious engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out.
What a perfect angel you are, Cecily.
Dear romantic boy. I hope your hair grows naturally. Does it?
Yes. Cecily, you'll never break off my engagement again, will you?
I don't think I ever could, now that I've actually met you. Besides, there is the question of your name.
My name?
You must not laugh at me, darling, but it has always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone whose name was Ernest. There's something in that name that seems to inspire absolute confidence.
But my dear child, do you mean to tell me that you could not love me if I had some other name?
But what name?
Oh, any name you like. Algernon, for instance.
But I don't like the name of Algernon.
Oh, but my own sweet, little loving little darling, I really can't quite see why you should object to the name of Algernon. I think it's a rather aristocratic name. Half the chaps who get into bankruptcy courts are called Algernon. If my name was Algie, couldn't you still love me?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character, but I fear I should not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Cecily, your rector here is, I suppose, thoroughly experienced in all the ceremonials of the church.
Oh, yes.
I must see him at once on the most important christening. Oh, I mean on most important business. Wait here, I'll be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is. I must enter his proposal into my diary. Oh, Miss Fairfax is here to see Mr. Worthing. She says it's on very important business. Isn't Mr. Worthing in his library? No. Mr. Worthing left in the direction of the rectory some time ago. Pray, ask the lady to come out to her. Mr. Worthing is sure to be back soon. And you can bring tea, Effie. Yes, Miss Fairfax, I suppose one of the many good elderly women associated with Uncle Jack in some of his philanthropic work in London. I don't quite like women interested in philanthropic work. I think it's so forward of them. Miss Fairfax, pray let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew. What a very sweet name. I may call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure.
And you will always call me Gwendolen, won't you?
If you wish.
Then it is all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
Cecily, I must confess that Mamma, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. So, do you mind my looking at you through my glasses?
Oh, not at all, Gwendolen. I am very fond of being looked at.
So am I. Something tells me we're going to be great friends. I like you already more than I can say. And my very first impression of people is never wrong.
No?
No. My very first impression is always right. And I confess your sweet expression one me. On sight, you see from Lever to Gloucester, I'm quite a threat, for I can spot the worst imposter through my lorgnette. A lady can always tell an usher. Breathing invariably shows the earmarks, according to my mother, are the tilt of a teacup and neatness by the hiccup. Yes, my very first impression is most correct, and since no sign of indiscretion do I detect. You may be my friend, dear, and you may call me Gwen, dear, for my very first impression shows great insight. It's bright, what's more, it's right.
Oh, I've been visited by my guardian. I know a lady anywhere. She's far more Victorian than important, for her manner is lifted, her nose is slightly tinted. Yes, my very first impression is most correct, and since no sign of indiscretion do I detect. You may be my friend, dear,
And you may call me Gwen, dear, for my very first impression shows great insight. It's bright, what's more, it's bright. You are here on a short visit, I suppose.
Oh no, I live here.
Really? Your mother, no doubt, or some other female relative of advanced years, resides here also.
No, my dear guardian has the arduous task of looking after me. I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
Really? He never mentioned to me that he had a ward. How very secretive of him. I am not sure that the news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. Cecily, I am very fond of you. I have liked you ever since we met. However, now that I know you are Mr. Worthing's ward, I cannot help but expressing the wish that you were, well, a little older perhaps, and not quite so alluring. In fact, if I may speak candidly.
Oh, pray do. I think that whenever one has something unpleasant to say, they should always be quite candid.
Well, speak with perfect candor, Cecily. I wish you were fully 42 and more than usually plain for your age. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. Disloyalty would be as impossible to him as deception. However,
I beg your pardon, Gwendolen. Gwen, did you say Ernest?
Yes?
Oh, but it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian. It is his elder brother.
He never mentioned that he had a brother.
I am sorry to say they have not been on good terms for a long time.
That accounts for it. Cecily, you have lifted a load from my mind, and it would have been terrible had any cloud come across a friendship like ours. Of course, you are quite certain that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian.
Quite sure. In fact, I am going to be his.
I beg your pardon?
Dearest Gwendolen, there is no reason why I should keep a secret of it to you. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My darling Cecily, I'm afraid there must be some slight error. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me.
I fear you must be under some misconception. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
It is certainly curious, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you would care to verify the incident, pray do so. I never travel without my diary. One must always have something sensational to read on the train. I'm afraid it's quite clear, dear Cecily, that I have the prior claim.
Dear Gwendolen, I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he has clearly changed his mind.
If the poor boy has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I shall consider it my duty to rescue him at once.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dear boy may have got into, I shall never reproach him for it after we are married.
Do you allude
to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement?
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I interrupt Ernest into an engagement? How dare you? This is no time for wearing a shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
I am glad to say that I have never seen a spade.
Shall I lay the tea here as usual, miss? Yes, as usual. May I offer you some tea, Miss Fairfax?
Yes, thank you. Detestable girl. I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar? Not fashionable anymore.
Muffins or bread and butter?
Bread and butter. Muffins are rarely seen in the best houses nowadays.
Hand that to Miss Fairfax.
You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar. Though I distinctly asked for bread and butter, you have given me muffins. I am known for the sweetness of my nature, but I warn you that you may go too far.
In a simple country nomenclature, you're priggish and wiggish and really rather piggish.
Oh, my very first impression is always right, and I confess your sweet expression I loathed on sight. You see, from Liverpool to Gloucester, I'm not failed yet to spot the very worst imposter through my own net.
That we're getting somewhat advanced in years. Resort to the most outrageous capers. They all seem to fancy a younger girl's Beyonce.
Oh, my very first impression is most correct, and every sign of indiscretion I now detect.
I'll not be your friend, yeah.
They do not call me Gwen, dear, for my very first impression is quite airtight,
But not too bright.
it's airy bright. What's more, it's right.
Gwendolyn, darling, what a marvelous surprise.
A moment, Ernest. May I ask if you're engaged to this young lady?
To little Cecily? Of course not.
Thank you. You may.
I knew there must be some slight error. The gentleman whose arm around your waist belongs to my dear guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon?
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack?
Oh! Here is Ernest.
My own love.
A moment, Ernest. Are you engaged to this young lady?
To what young lady? Oh, good heavens, Gwendolyn.
Yes, to Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn. I mean, to Gwendolyn.
Of course not.
Thank you. You may.
I felt there must be some slight error, Miss Cardew. The gentleman whose arm is now around your waist is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon Moncrief. Oh, you call Algernon.
I cannot deny it.
Is your name really Jack?
I could deny it if I liked. I could deny anything if I liked. But I must say that my name is Jack. It's been Jack for years.
A gross deception has been practiced upon both of us.
My poor wounded Cecily.
My sweet wronged Gwendolyn.
Mr. Worthing, there's just one question I would like to be allowed to put to you. Where is your brother Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to him at present, so it is a matter of some importance to us where he is.
Cecily, Gwendolyn, it is very painful for me to be forced to speak the truth. It's the first time I think I've ever been reduced to such a position. However, I must candidly say that I have no brother Ernest.
No brother at all?
None. I haven't had a brother in all my life, and I haven't the slightest intention of having one in the future.
I'm afraid it's quite clear, Cecily, that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
It is not a pleasant position for a young girl to suddenly find herself in, is it?
Let us go into the house. You will call me sister, won't you?
Certainly.
This ghastly state of affairs is what you call bunburying, I suppose.
Yes, and a perfectly wonderful Bunbury it is too. The most wonderful Bunbury I've ever had in my life.
How you can brother sit there eating muffins? I can't make out.
It's simple. I'm hungry.
Can't you see I'm in a real dilemma? You selfish lout.
But eating consoles me. You can like a lumpet, but a bit of crumpet, and a spot of tea will ease your tensions.
And make you stout. Just look at your waistline.
What about my waistline?
It's bulging.
It is not.
Your course
When problems come my way,
and me
and I am forced to think,
and quite
I turn down everything
obscene.
except for food and drink. Okay,
Whatever shall we do?
how sweet
We've got to make this through.
I love
I wish you'd get a clue.
to eat,
But you just eat.
enough.
I wish you'd go.
I'd rather stay.
It's all very well for you to sit there eating muffins, but will Gwendolyn forgive me? That's the question.
Why don't you go and ask her just that question?
I hope you get a case of indigestion.
Oh, nothing
Severe in my digestion. Algernon, I've already told you to go. Why don't you just go?
I haven't quite finished my tea yet. And besides, there's still one muffin left.
The fact that they did not follow us into the house immediately seems to show that they have some sense of shame left.
They had me eating muffins. That looks like repentance.
They're looking at us. What effrontery!
They're approaching. That's very forward of them.
Let us preserve a dignified silence.
Certainly, it is the only thing to do now.
This dignified silence seems to produce a most unpleasant effect. But we will not be the first to speak.
Certainly not.
Mr. Worthing, there is one question I must be allowed to put to you.
Mr. Moncrief, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's elder brother?
So that I might have an opportunity of meeting you.
That certainly seems a satisfactory explanation. Is it not?
Yes, dear, if you can believe him.
I don't. But that does not change the wonderful beauty of his answer.
True, in matters of grave importance, style, not sincerity, is the vital thing. Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you offer to me for pretending to have a brother?
Then I might be able to come up to town and see you as often as possible.
Their explanation certainly appears satisfactory, especially Mr. Worthing's. That seems to me to have the stamp of truth upon it. Do you think we should forgive them?
Yes. I mean, no.
True, I had forgotten. There are matters of principle at stake here which one must not surrender. Which of us should tell them?
Could we not both speak at the same time?
An excellent idea. I nearly always speak at the same time as other people. Will you take the time from me?
Certainly. Your Christian names are still an insuperable barrier. That is all.
Our Christian names, is that all?
But going to be christened this afternoon.
For my sake, you are prepared to do this terrible thing?
I am.
To please me, you are ready to face this fearful ordeal?
I am.
How absurd to talk of the equality of the sexes, where questions of self-sacrifice are concerned. Men are infinitely beyond us.
We are.
I had doubts, but I surely will crush them. For I know now that you are sincere.
we stand here before you surrendered, and beside you as long as we live. In return for the trust you've engendered, our eternal devotion will give. Yes, I pledge my devotion. Yes, I pledge my devotion. Return as equal and winter and summer and bird and leaf. And if your love should falter, even that would not alter my eternal devotion to you, my dear, my eternal devotion to you.
Yes, I pledge my devotion.
Yes, I pledge my
My eternal devotion to Lady Bracknell.
Oh, good heavens.
What does this mean?
Merely that I'm engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Come here. Sit down. Sit down immediately. Apprised, sir, of my daughter's sudden flight by her trusty maid, whose confidence by means of a small coin. I followed her at once by a luggage train. Her unhappy father is, I am glad to say, under the impression that she is attending a more than usually lengthy lecture at the university. I do not propose to undeceive him. Indeed, I have never undeceived him on any question. I would consider it wrong. But you will understand that all communication between yourself and my daughter must cease immediately from this moment. On this point, as on all points, I am firm.
I am engaged to be married to Gwendolyn, Lady Bracknell.
You are nothing of the kind, sir. And now, as regards Algernon.
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
Is this the house in which your invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, resides?
Oh, no, Bunbury doesn't live here. Bunbury is somewhere else at present. In fact, Bunbury is dead.
Dead? His death must have been extremely sudden. What did he die of?
Oh, Bunbury. Oh, well, he was quite exploded. I mean, he was found out. The doctors found out that Bunbury could not live, so Bunbury died.
He seems to have had great confidence in the opinion of his physician. Mr. Worthing, who is the young person whose hand my nephew is now holding in what seems to be a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
That young lady is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward.
I'm engaged to Cecily, Aunt Augusta.
I do not know whether there is anything peculiarly exciting in the air of this particular part of Hertfordshire, but the number of engagements that go on seem to be considerably above the proper average that statistics have laid down for our guidance. I think some preliminary inquiry on my part would not be out of place. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew connected at all to any of the larger railway stations in the
Miss Cardew was the granddaughter of the late Mr. Thomas Cardew. I have in my possession, will be gladly here, certificates of her birth, baptism, registration, vaccination, whooping cough, and the measles, both the English and the German variety.
Ah, a life crowded with incident.
fortune?
Oh, about £130,000. That is all. Good day, Lady Bracknell.
£130,000. Miss Cardew seems to be a most attractive young lady now that I look at her. Come over here, dear. Pretty child, your dress is sadly simple, and your hair seems almost as nature would have left it. But we can soon alter all that. Turn round, sweet child. No, the side view is what I want. Algernon.
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
There are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile.
Oh, Cecily is the sweetest, dearest, prettiest girl in the whole world, and I don't care tuppence about her social possibilities.
Never speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only people who cannot get into it do that. Well, I suppose I must give my consent.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
The marriage, I think, should take place quite soon. I do not approve of long engagements, for they give people the opportunity to find out each other's character before marriage. Which I think is never advisable.
Lady Bracknell, I'm afraid this engagement is entirely out of the question. Cecily cannot marry without my consent until she comes of age, and that consent I decline to give.
Well, it won't be long till you are of age, I imagine. So I don't think your guardian's consent is, after all, of any importance.
By the terms of her grandfather's will, Cecily does not come of age until she is 35.
Algie, could you wait for me till I was 35?
Of course I could, Cecily. You know I could.
Yes, I felt it instinctively. But I fear I should not be able to wait all that time. I hate waiting even 5 minutes for anybody. It always makes me rather cross.
My dear Mr. Worthing, as Miss Cardew positively states that she cannot wait till she is 35, a remark which seems to show a somewhat impatient nature, I beg you to reconsider your decision.
But Lady Bracknell, the matter is entirely in your hands. I would gladly agree to an alliance between your nephew and my ward. The moment you agree to my marriage with Gwendolyn.
That is quite out of the question. I told you a handbag is not a problem, not a problem, not a problem. This passion within you simply makes you smaller, or you better find another mother soon. Cloak room is not a problem, not a problem, not a problem. You kindly advise him we need to be a mother. I suggest he find a father rather soon. Lady Bracknell, be so honest and deserving, brother. Oh, brother, can't you see it's he I want to marry? My dear children, my decision is unswerving. My decision seems to be that a handbag is not a problem, mater, not a problem, mater, not a problem, mater. Sins of mater are bound to come up later, so we'd better find another mater, or a proper mater, or produce a marriage by this afternoon.
Well, as that is the position you insist on taking, a passionate celibacy is all that any of us can look forward to.
That is not the destiny I propose for Gwendolyn.
Uncle Jack, I refuse to spend the rest of my life in the presence of a short-sighted old lady like Miss Prism.
Cecily, that will do. I will not have you speak that way of Miss Prism.
Did I hear you mention a Miss Prism?
Yes, you know her.
Is this Miss Prism a female of repellent aspect, remotely connected with education?
Miss Prism is the most cultivated of ladies and the very picture of respectability.
It is obviously the same person. May I ask what position she holds in your household?
Miss Prism is Cecily's esteemed governess.
I must see her at once. Where is she?
You might find her at the rectory. She likes to watch the sunset from the vestry window.
Mr. Worthing, you will accompany me to the rectory at once. Come, Gwendolyn.
I must admit the prospect of our marriage seems rather thin.
Oh, come now, it's not that bad.
When pitted in a war against her mother, no one can win.
But We could try eloping.
Oh no!
Then there's only one thing to resort to.
A life of sin.
Well, there!
Quite fashionable nowadays.
He's perfectly right, you know.
It's entirely out of the question.
I
Though I'll wed someone else
sweetheart,
who isn't quite my choice,
we must
I'll carry in my heart
not part
the memory of your voice, your smile,
that we cannot allow.
your hair,
We'll cause an awful row.
your lips,
We'll find a way somehow, we swear.
then tell us how.
Right now,
This afternoon.
that's awfully soon.
It is now or never?
Never.
Never. If only Mamma told this.
Only Mama. We've got to find a way to get around it. To get around it. Oh, what would happen if we gagged and bound her? Or gagged her and drowned her?
No joking matter.
Who's joking?
Mr. Worthing.
Coming, Lady Bracknell.
Go quickly, literature. Put the flowers on the altar. They are approaching. They are nigh. Oh, what a joyous day this is. Welcome, welcome. Everything is prepared for the christenings.
The christening, isn't that somewhat premature?
I don't think that as things are at present, it would be of much practical value to either of us, Dr. Chasper.
Practical value. Well, as your mood seems to be one peculiarly secular, I will retire at once.
All is prepared for the glorious christening.
Prism! Come here, Prism! Prism, where is that baby? 28 years ago, you left Lord Bracknell's house in charge of a perambulator containing one baby of the male sex. You never returned. A few weeks later, the perambulator was discovered in a remote corner of Bayswater. It contained the manuscript of a 3-volume novel of a more than usually revolting sentimentality. But the baby was not there. Prism, where is that baby?
Lady Bracknell, I admit with shame that I do not know. On the morning of the day you mention, a day that is forever grinded on my memory, I proceeded, as usual, to take the baby out in its perambulator. I had also with me a handbag in which I had intended to place the manuscript of a work of fiction that I had written during my few unoccupied hours. During a moment of mental abstraction, for which I will never forgive myself, I deposited the manuscript in the perambulator and placed the baby in the handbag.
But where did you place the handbag?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
Miss Prism, this is a matter of no small importance to me. I insist on knowing where you placed that handbag.
In the cloakroom of one of the larger railway stations in London.
Which railway station?
Victoria, the Brighton line.
You must all excuse me for a moment. Dr. Chasper, if you have the keys to that closet, I require the article I gave you for safekeeping. Gwendolyn, wait here for me a moment.
If you are not too long, I will wait for you all my life.
Lady Bracknell, what do you suppose this all means?
I dare not suspect, Dr. Chasuble. I need hardly tell you that in families of high position, strange coincidences are not supposed to occur.
Uncle Jack seems strangely agitated.
Your guardian does have a very emotional nature.
The suspense is terrible. I hope it will last.
Miss Prism, is this the handbag? Examine it carefully before you speak. The happiness of more than one life depends on your answer.
Why, yes, it seems to be mine. handbag is undoubtedly mine. I am delighted to have it so unexpectedly restored to me. It has been quite an inconvenience doing without it for all these years.
Miss Prism, more has been restored to you in this handbag. I was the baby who placed it in it.
You?
Yes, mother.
Mr. Worthing, I am unmarried.
Unmarried? Mother, I forgive you.
There is a lady who can tell you who you really are.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive, but would you kindly tell me who I am?
You are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently, Algernon's elder brother.
Algy's elder brother? Cecily, I always told you I had an elder brother. Dr. Chasuble, my unfortunate brother. Miss Prism, my unfortunate brother. Gwendolyn, my unfortunate brother. Algy, you young scoundrel, you'll have to treat me with more respect in the future. You've never treated me like a brother in all your life.
Well, not till today, old boy, I admit.
My own? But what are you? Who are you now that you have become someone else?
Oh, I'd quite forgotten that point. I suppose your decision on my name is irrevocable.
I never change, except in my affections.
No need you have, Gwendolyn.
Lady Bracknell, at the time I was left in the handbag, had I been christened?
Every luxury that money could buy was lavished on you by your fond and doting parents, including christening.
Yes, what name was I given?
Being the eldest son, you were naturally christened after the general.
Yes, but what was his name?
At the present moment, I cannot seem to remember what the general's Christian name was, although I have no doubt that he had one.
Algy, surely you remember what your father's name was.
My dear boy, we were never even on speaking terms. He died before I was a year old.
Lady Bracknell, that wouldn't by any chance be the General Moncrief responsible for putting down the insurrection of West Punjab in 1860.
He was constantly involved in uprisings, especially in his domestic life.
Dr. Chasuble, did you know it?
Oh, quite well. I held the post of chaplainship under General Moncrief many years ago.
You? A man of peace?
Well, that too, Miss Prism, was in younger and happier days.
Dr. Chasuble, you don't by any chance remember what his name was, do you?
Oh, certainly. Lieutenant General Ernest John Moncrief, Earl of Sussex and Adjutant to Field Marshal Markby, Chief of the Imperial General Staff of Her Majesty's Royal Army.
Ernest John. I always said my name was Ernest, didn't I, Gwendolyn?
Yes, I remember now. The general's Christian name was Ernest. I knew there was some reason for disliking the name.
My own, I felt from the first you could have no other name.
My own Gwendolyn, it's very difficult for a man to suddenly find out that all his life has been speaking nothing but the truth. Can you ever forgive me?
I can, but I know you are sure to change.
My own one.
Cecily, at last.
Ernest, at last.
Letitia!
Gwendolyn, we have missed 5, if not 6 trains. To miss any more would expose us to comment on the platform. Come, Gwendolyn.
Certainly, Mamma.
The grass is ever so much greener past, but down in the heavens above, and as for you, the sparkle in your golden be no toss, because you are earnest in love, and where you go, you'll find a river right before you meet. The air is the song